Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video, and this is another basketball reaction, and you're probably seeing why am I on the screen. I'm going to do two video reactions to Tracy McGrady. I'm going to do a sort of reaction to his story, because I've heard a lot about like how he was seen as one of the brightest stars, and at one point he was one of the best players in the league. But I feel like something happened, maybe he didn't have the success in terms of sort of trophies, of like just things like that. I'm not too sure. So I'm gonna do Tracy McGrady, the NBA's most tragic and forgotten star, and then I'm gonna do the one just above it, Tracy McGrady's career top 10 plays, just because that's quite a short one and I don't want this video to be too long. But if people do want like other reactions to him, I will do so. Again, I just sort of feel like this would be best, because if I just did this one on its own, I know people would be pissed off, and rightly so, because I do want to see what he was like as a player, as well as like his story, because I just feel like he's a cool player to sort of learn about, because people have been suggesting him for such a long time. And yeah, man, let's just give him a look. I know he had the comparisons to Kobe in all these different things, and I mean, just to have that comparison in the first place is ridiculous. But I feel like there was a point where he was actually like sort of held in high regard in him. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I feel like I've seen that said somewhere. Maybe I'm just thinking that. But let's check this out and see what happened. And I'm obviously known for his 13 points in 33 seconds, which is, in terms of stats, it probably is the most ridiculous stat I've ever seen, especially with the comeback. But I'm interested to see about him and like more as a person and as a player as well, like his background and his story. So let's give this a watch and see like what happened with his career.
The guy that always gave me the most problems actually was Tracy McGrady.
Tracy McGrady.
Yeah. Tracy McGrady, man. Tracy McGrady with his, he had all the skills and all the athleticism, but he was 6'9".
What's up, guys? Mike here,
6'9".
and did you know that Kobe Bryant is 1 year older than Tracy McGrady? Did you know that in 2002 and 2003, Kobe Bryant and Tracy McGrady were both named to the first team All-NBA? Did you know that at the age of 34, Kobe Bryant was named to his final first team All-NBA selection, his 11th first team selection in his career, while at the age of 34, Tracy McGrady was retired. At one time in their lives, there was a real discussion between who was better, Kobe Bryant or Tracy McGrady. Kobe retired as a 5-time champion, an MVP, and one of the greatest players to ever play the game. T-Mac, on the other hand, retired at the age of 32. Retired as a shadow of the player he had once been. So what happened? What caused Tracy McGrady from going from one of the best players in the NBA, a player who had a chance to...
32? That is brutal. I mean, we're going to see what happened and what led to that, but that is brutal.
To become one of the best players of all time, to instead one of the most tragic figures in basketball history. Well, today, guys, we are going to look at the career of Tracy McGrady, and I'm going to show you just why Tracy McGrady should have been an NBA legend. The first 2 seasons of Tracy McGrady's career were just about as forgettable as you could possibly get. As an 18-year-old lottery pick taken straight from high school, T-Mac spent his first 2 years in Toronto averaging under 23 minutes per game while scoring less than 10 points a night. But even just watching him at this young age, you could already tell that the seeds were planted for a future.
So he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't like...
Because at 6'8", Tracy stood among the tallest shooting guards in NBA history. He was fast, he had a 43-inch vertical leap, and he could shoot the basketball. Scratch that, he could both shoot and score the basketball, as well as set up his teammates for easy baskets. When it comes down to it, an 18 to 20-year-old Tracy McGrady was everything you could ever imagine in a top basketball prospect. In fact, if for some reason we were cloning shooting guards, I would argue very strongly that Tracy McGrady would be the perfect choice. He had the ideal body type, top-tier athleticism, and ridiculous natural talent. And then came his 3rd season in Toronto, where everything seemed to click. Finally receiving good playing time, McGrady averaged over 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists per game, while showing the world that he was just scratching the surface of his potential. And at the time, Toronto Raptors fans could not have been more excited. They had Vince Carter and T-Mac seemingly the next 8 to 10 years. Bringing an NBA title to Canada was more than a possibility. But then, Tracy decided to leave for the Orlando Magic. Now, before we go any further, I need to remind you guys just how good Tracy McGrady was as a basketball player in his prime. As I've already said, the man was a legitimate rival to Kobe Bryant, and the numbers back this up. Now, in my James Harden video, I talked about just how good James Harden was between the ages of 23 and 26. This is where, as a shooting guard, players really start to hit their prime. In fact, many shooting guards have their best season during this time period. When looking at a list that includes Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, and Allen Iverson, T-Mac ranks second among these legends in rebounds per game from the ages of 23 to 26. In terms of assists per game, he ranks 4th, and in terms of points per game, he ranks 3rd. He clearly fits in on this list. He clearly belongs, which means that from the ages of 23 to 26,
I actually want to see.
McGrady was clearly.
I actually do want to see this just to see general sort of stats. So Jordan's first in that, Wade's first there. So you see Jordan is just top and literally everything, but the fact that he's even he's second to Jordan there, and not by far either. He's 4th there, but he's on average he's not the bottom for anything. Like you see D Wade, he's top for he's top there, but then he's the lowest there. So it's kind of mixed. But with McGrady, he just seems balanced at everything compared to the best players in in this position, in these stats. So there is levels to that, man. That's kind of crazy.
Is that from the ages of 23 to 26, Tracy McGrady was clearly set up to establish himself as one of the all-time greatest shooting guards in NBA history. And going even further, let's take a look at the best guard and wing players' numbers in the prime season of their career. As you can see, 2003 T-Mac more than holds his own with some of the all-time NBA legends. This list of 7 NBA stars has produced 25 total championships, but somehow McGrady never even made it out of the first round of a single NBA playoff series. How is this possible? Well, T-Mac's career just happened to be dominated by one theme: bad luck. So after 3 years as a Raptor, T-Mac left his cousin Vince and joined the Orlando Magic. Who can really blame him? He was leaving Canada for America. Just kidding, Canadians. I'm sorry. Anyway, in today's contract rules, this move would not have been possible. Tracy would have been forced to spend at least 2 more years as a Toronto Raptor, and that would have impacted his career tremendously. Because the season after T-Mac left for Orlando, the Toronto Raptors had one of the best seasons in their franchise history. They finished with a 47-35 record and lost to the Sixers in 7 games in the Eastern Conference semifinals. That Sixers team would go on to reach the NBA Finals and would lose to the Lakers in 5 games. But here's the thing. In 2001, Tracy would finally realize his full potential as an NBA star. He averaged 27 points per game and led a crappy Orlando Magic team to a first-round playoff loss. If the Raptors had superstar T-Mac playing for them in 2001, then they almost certainly would have beaten the Sixers in the Eastern Conference semifinals and reached the NBA Finals for the first time in their franchise history. But it didn't happen, thus marking the...
So if he didn't leave, see, it's just how things pan out. But obviously hindsight is a beautiful thing. Back then, he would have had his reasoning to why he left.
First mistake / bad luck that T-Mac encountered in his career. Because when T-Mac fled for the Orlando Magic in the 2001 season, he was supposed to be leaving for greener pastures. That summer, the Magic also signed Grant Hill, an all-around NBA superstar who should have been the perfect wing player to complement McGrady's game. Hill was unselfish and didn't need the ball in his hands the majority of the time to fully impact a game, which meant that McGrady had full reign to dribble the ball the most, to take the most shots, to get the most assists, and still play with one of the best wing players in the NBA. But then, everything went horribly wrong. After signing a massive deal with the Magic, Grant Hill suffered massive injuries. These injuries would cause him to play a grand total of 47 games in the 4 years that T-Mac played for the Orlando Magic. So instead of
47 games in 4... I thought he was going to say 47 games in 1 year. In 4 years. Oh my god, he must have had the worst of injuries.
With another top 10 player in the NBA and potentially competing for NBA championships, Tracy was forced to play with subpar talent and again had no real shot at competing for a title, as the Orlando Magic had no cap space to chase other stars because they were paying Grant Hill tons of money to ride the bench. These Orlando years were McGrady's ultimate prime, a prime that was showcased in 2003 when as a 23-year-old he averaged 32 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 5.5 assists a night while dragging the Magic to a first-round loss against the Pistons. In this Pistons series, the Pistons were the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference while the Magic were the 8th seed, but still the series went to 7 games. The reason for this was that Tracy McGrady averaged 32 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists while single-handedly keeping his team in the series. He did everything he could here, but still, people remember Tracy McGrady as a playoff loser. And so, already in T-Mac's young career, he suffered through 2 bouts of horrible luck. By the time he left the Magic in the 2004 season, his 7th in the NBA, Tracy had played with exactly 2 All-Stars in his entire career. One was Grant Hill, who, as I said, never played really, and the other was, of course, his cousin Vince. Again, whenever anyone talks about LeBron's early years...
When he says cousin, are they actually cousins? I think I may have missed, I've heard him say cousins, but are they blood cousins, or is it just a thing that they call each other? Because if they're cousins, mate, your family genetics are wild.
As a Cav, they bring up his lack of talent. But when you compare T-Mac's final years in Orlando to LeBron's final years as a Cavalier, it's very, very close. And finally, we come to Tracy's Houston years. Now remember, T-Mac was traded to Houston in the same year that the team had just landed Dwight Howard. If McGrady had spent the rest of his prime in Orlando, he could have teamed up with Dwight, the perfect center for a player of McGrady's talents. If his back had held up on him as well, we'll get to that, T-Mac would have been the perfect player to lead the Orlando Magic teams that found huge success spreading the floor around Dwight. It's very possible that a player like McGrady would have swung the 2009 finals and won the Orlando Magic their first ever basketball championship. And at the very least, T-Mac would have been a part of teams that won playoff series. But instead, T-Mac ended up in Houston. Now in Houston, Tracy did create some of these signature moments that would end up defining his NBA legacy. Of course, we all remember the time he scored 13 points in 33 seconds to steal a game away from the San Antonio Spurs. Side note, young Mike actually watched this game live, and I'll always remember this as my first memory of actually watching basketball history unfold before my eyes. Moving on, we'll also remember the Rockets' insane run of 22 wins in a row with a team that was a borderline title contender at best. But what we really need to remember Houston for is the last time that Tracy McGrady took the court as an NBA superstar. His first 3 seasons as a Rocket were typical T-Mac. He was an all-star, he was regarded as one of the best players in the NBA, and he was still incapable of winning a single playoff series. Call it bad luck, call it whatever you want, but the Houston Rockets were the beginning of the end of the career of Tracy McGrady. Earlier in this video, I hit you with some stats. I showed you how a prime Tracy McGrady was just as good as any of the NBA legends who played on the wing before him. But we're at the point of the video where things go horribly wrong, because when we use the same list of NBA legends and rank them from their stats between the ages of 29 to 32, this is what we get. As you can see, McGrady finishes dead last in every single category except for rebounds, where he finishes second to last. And when looking at the point averages of these players, you can really see just how drastically Tracy fell off.
Oh my god, he averaged 8 points from 29 to 32. What the fuck? So he really fell off.
But T-Mac averaged at least 22 points per game during this stretch, while Tracy McGrady and his 32nd year would mark the last time that Tracy McGrady laced up for an NBA regular season game. After that, he was finished. You can now find him discussing the game of basketball on television. So what happened? How did one of the most promising basketball players of all time go from putting up NBA legend type stats to becoming a below average player who was forced to retire at the age of 32? Well, to put it simply, his back gave out on him. His Houston career was plagued with back spasms that constantly flared up and kept him off the court. Despite several treatments from some of the best doctors in the field, these back injuries would stay with him for the rest of his career. On top of this, T-Mac also began to develop problems with his shoulder and knee at seemingly the same time. This led to Tracy undergoing surgery on both his left shoulder and left knee at the end of the 2008 season, which eventually led to microfracture surgery on his knee the next season, which eventually led to him never fully regaining his athleticism or playing ability. At the end of the day, his body betrayed him, and Tracy McGrady was forced to retire at 32, which was just way too young. But it wasn't only his injuries that held McGrady back in his career, because by all accounts of people who played with Tracy, who coached him, who were with him on a day-to-day basis, T-Mac's main problem was apparent. He was simply not wired to be an alpha male, to be an NBA superstar, to be a leader a team needs to win an NBA championship. When asked who the leader was on the Houston Rockets' 22-game win streak, Houston GM Daryl Morey replied with probably Chuck Hayes. Chuck Hayes? A career backup center, a player who made it to the NBA with hard work and determination, who in his best moments still never had an ounce of the talent that Tracy McGrady was blessed with. And so I think this quote by Morey shows us the biggest tragedy in T-Mac's career. The man was simply not built to lead a team. Instead, he should have been the greatest second best player on a team of all time. If at any time in his prime he had paired with a true alpha dog, he would have won games, he would have won championships, he would have been remembered as an NBA legend. Instead, Tracy McGrady is just another huge what if in NBA history. And he's the perfect reminder that no matter how good a player is, he still needs other stars to win a championship. And thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video.
Interesting. So he never reached past the first round. That's wild. Is there any sort of like, I know Chris Paul's had poor luck in the playoffs. I'm guessing he's reached further than the first round. To have never reached past that is wild. And also, he like with the luck that he had, I mean, like he left. I feel like him and Carter could have been a really good link up, but I mean, I don't really know much about that, so maybe I'm wrong about that sort of comparison or that sort of combo. But like, was he with Yao Ming at the Rockets? I'm not too sure. I think he may have been, or maybe Yao Ming was a bit before.
I really enjoyed making it. I loved reminiscing about young T-Mac. When I was a kid, Tracy McGrady was actually my favorite player, so it honestly sucked to see him never reach the success that everyone knew he was capable of. But I guess that's just sports. That's just basketball. These things happen. Now,
It is just how it is. Like injuries and like obviously the fact that he had a teammate who, if he was fit, they could have went on to do bits, man. And in 4 years he played like 47 games. That is just unfortunate, man. You can't really do anything about that. But yeah, I mean, forgotten T-Mac ain't forgotten lol. He's a legend. T-Mac was Kobe Bryant without success, old enough to know and witness his whole career. If both Ming and McGrady could have both stayed healthy for consecutive years, the Houston team would have been very dangerous. So they were together, and I mean, them like on prime Ming and prime McGrady without their injuries, my God, that would have been some link up, man. Tracy McGrady and Derrick Rose have two of the most tragic NBA stories of all time. Although Tracy achieved so much in the NBA and could have done more, although Rose was the youngest MVP in league history and multi-time All-Star, he could have been an all-time great, but injuries caused both of them for short greatness. Yeah, man. When your careers are like cut short or like you aren't able to reach your prime because of injuries, it's the worst thing, man. Like to see a player not be able to fulfill their potential, it's just sad. It is just sad, but that's sport, isn't it? Let's check this one. Tracy McGrady's career top 10 plays. Again, I was going to do this. Sorry if this might be a bit of a weird sort of structured video. But let's check this one out, man. Look at the editing. Wait. Oh my. Okay. So they were the passing man. Oh mate. What was his best attribute? Like shooting, passing. Oh! What the fuck? Jesus Christ.
One more pressure when you're playing at home. Oh, McGrady just
He's got everything, man. He seems to just like have these.
To the rack. Are you kidding me? LeBron says, wait a minute.
There's a dunk there. There was a layup to himself beforehand. That was a passing.
People is doing a heck of a job of guarding Tracy. He's fighting through all the screens. Watch him dunk it after I say that. Oh!
Is that a 360? Oh, mate.
With a 360.
360 is so satisfying to see.
Tracy,
Look at his teammates.
and he looks over at Tyrese Thomas and he said, block that. We haven't seen T-Mac do this all season. T-Mac is back.
T-Mac is back.
McGrady driving on Lynch.
Oh,
Shot by T-Mac. The shot was blocked and he still got it to go with the
what a shot.
how he came out of that crowd. Sloppy play. Steal by McGrady. He's got Armstrong. He's got Garrett Chet. He takes it!
He loves that, don't he? He absolutely loves that. They're some of the most like craziest things to see. When you're laying yourself off like that, it's wild. Now that's fun that I want to see.
You don't see this kind of energy and passion. It's playoff time. Look at the extension.
The aggression in that.
Bradley.
He wants none of that shit. He's trying to stay away from it, mate.
Picked up by Randy Brown, loose in the lane. Finally stolen by Toronto. Tracy McGrady.
This is
McGrady
a
on the
young
run.
age, though.
McGrady down the lane. He dunked it with the right hand. Oh my!
Went right over the top of
In that kit as well, in that jersey. It just sits on him.
He took off from the dotted line and hammered that home with the right hand.
What's number one going to be? Okay, yeah. Of course it's this one. This is still nuts to me though. I don't know how you can even pull this off. We'll never ever get old, man. I genuinely think this is, for me, it has to be one of the craziest clips I've seen in basketball. Like, how are you scoring 13 points in 33 seconds to make a comeback for your team? That's just unreal to me, man. I can't get over how he did that, man. But like, Yeah, I mean, I guess he was just a talent who wasn't able to reach his full potential, like with the injuries and with the sort of his teammates around him not being fit, like the main teammates. Like he was just playing with players who weren't as good as he initially thought they were going to be, because obviously his teammates were injured and things like that. And yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on him? But to retire at 32, that's kind of mad, because you're seeing like players like LeBron, he's 35 and still thriving. Chris Paul, 33, 34, he's still balling out. And then you see like McGrady, who in comparison to the greats, he was up there competing at one point, and then suddenly he just dropped off with the injuries as well. It's crazy how things can change in a matter of years, man. T-Mac, Vince, Iverson, Penny Hardaway, Grant Hill, unlucky stars. People look at me crazy when I say T-Mac is my favourite player of all time. Even though my boy was mad popular in his prime, I still say he was always underrated. There's simply never had been another player with that sheer amount of talent and skills that Tracy had, and never will be. He had the game of basketball. He made the game of basketball look so effortless, like it was in his very DNA. He was a threat all over the floor, and watching him play mesmerised me when I was a kid. I'm seeing people say that a lot. Like when they were a kid, like obviously Michael Zemba said the same thing. He seems like a player that people looked up to a lot. His name will go down the record books as the man to score 13 points, 35 seconds, 33 seconds, bro. Come on, I was thinking that. I actually cried in the last three. I honestly think Prime Tracy could have taken Prime Jordan. His uniform always looked a little too big. That is true, isn't it? I was thinking that his uniform always looked like really baggy. I was gonna say that earlier. Is that like his signature thing or something? Because I literally was gonna mention that, and I was thinking that as well. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Bit of a weird reaction, but I mean, I'll be down to do more Tracy McGrady reactions in the future. I mean, I don't know if people are going to enjoy this because maybe they would want more highlight reactions, and in that case, I apologise. But I sort of wanted to mix it up because I did want to see his sort of story and like why he wasn't able to live up to his potential. And yeah, it's a sad story, but like that's sport, isn't it? Like these things happen. He's still a great, like with the numbers that you see, he won't be forgotten. Even though the title of the last one was, that's probably just to get views, etc. But I mean, yeah, it's a weird one, but that's just how sport is, I guess. Like some people have the luck, some people don't. Timing is like the most important thing. Like if he stayed at the Raptors for like a year or two more, maybe they could have went on like him and Carter could have went on to have like a crazy sort of duo partnership. But you never know. Like hindsight is a thing that we use a lot, but we just never know. But hopefully you guys enjoy this one. Until next time, like, subscribe, and peace.